Look, there's a little bit of a sign in some data today, Kristy, that shows you, of course, how the public have got more sense than the politicians. And it is that only 2 in 5 Australians believe that the country's going to get to these climate ambitions, net zero emissions of 2030 and 2050. It means that, Kristy, while these things supposedly are politically popular, blind Freddie can see that it ain't going to happen.
Well, what I found really interesting about the results of this poll, over 1,200 people, it's a significant sample, was that in issues that people care about unprompted, so these are things that they bring up as a concern to them in focus groups, healthcare and crime is leading as the top 2 unprompted concerns, ahead of any concerns they have around climate change and renewable and clean energy, primarily because people just want to pay their bills. And I think that most people are looking at the way the industry, such as the Minerals Councils of Australia, launching a significant campaign against the Labor Party, how they have not engaged properly with the automotive industry around green energy transition and saying, look, they haven't negotiated this properly with industry. And if you can't negotiate with industry to get to a resolution, you can't meet those targets unless you do it by pure stealth, which seems to be what is occurring.
Yeah, and they're all promises that are sort of 10 elections away for these people, which is why they're meaningless. It's interesting too, given we've got a cost of living crisis, of course, I noticed that Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, is stepping back from the idea of charging EV drivers a road usage charge. I mean, he's not going to want to throw out another tax, another cost that's going to be politically unpopular. But it does mean, Liz, that apart from the tax breaks and the incentives, EV drivers get to use our roads for free, unlike the rest of us.
For free. Although we don't know that that charge isn't going to come into play. We just know it's not going to come into play before an election that federal Labor desperately wants to win. So this is just a ridiculous ploy, and it just goes to show how much the ruling elites take us for flogs, because you've already flagged that you intend to do this, but you won our votes, so you're not going to do it prior to an election because it may lose you some, but you've already declared your intentions. So the whole idea is that most people, which sadly is true in Australia, aren't politically alive enough to what's going on in this space to know that unless it doesn't hit their hip pocket before the election, they may place their vote differently. That's what Chalmers is counting on. And it's just so disingenuous taking Aussies for a ride like this.
Bank the free roads with your $275 power bill cut.
Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait.
What amuses me too, like Labor and all the other lefties, of course, they talk up all the time this climate emergency and we're all going to drown in boiling oceans and whatever, and then they wonder why they get protesters turn up here at Kirribilli saying that the Labor Party is not doing enough to save the planet, Kristy. I mean, they're just reaping what they've sown here, right? You call it an emergency, well, then you want to be doing all sorts of things to supposedly save the planet.
Look, my view, Chris, is that the government and the Greens and their preference coalition are sort of like the Channel 10 of politics. The poll numbers keep slipping. We've seen these polls today on the energy targets. They're slipping in Queensland, but they're pitching to an audience that they think they've captured, which is the under 35s, where they're polling ahead. And so that's a very core constituency for them, and that's what they're pitching to. We're going to see Labor have to out-green the Greens to keep that constituency. They're going to have to speak more of emergency, and that, of course, is going to drive more people from the centre perhaps to the coalition or to other minor parties further on the centre-right, as this tussle between Labor and the Greens of who can be the bigger hero to the under 35s and the climate emergency continues through to the next election.
I'd fix it all tomorrow by getting rid of compulsory voting, but we'll save that debate for another day.